So pals, I have a confession, and this confession may come as quite the shock to you, so please, take a seat on your fainting couch and mentally prepare yourself for this incoming earth-shattering shock. I have never played the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard before. Yes, it's true. You see, up until this point, I was living a lie. I'd been telling people that I was one of the few people who actually did play this game, or at least the demo of it. However, it simply wasn't true. The truth is, I got this game mixed up with another game, and that other game was Sid Meier's Pirates, or at least the remake of it. Both are swashbuckling adventures, and sort of look the same. Sure, they came out multiple years apart, but let's just ignore that. I'd love to sit here and tell you all the memories I had of this game, and how I, played it and had a good time, but that simply isn't true, and I can't do it, because I never played this game and thus have no memories of it. In fact, I'm now beginning to be convinced that this game actually passed right by me when it released. But hey, these things happen. Still, you'll be happy to know that as of Tuesday, August 27th, it's been a little while, 2024, I, Lycan, have finished the entirety of the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard for the very first time. Sure, it took me over 20 years, but hey, better late than never, am I right? So, what do I think of the game? Well, I'm not gonna lie to you or even make you wait until the end of the video for the answer. I liked this game. It wasn't perfect, but, it's those imperfections and extremely rough edges that stopped me from truly loving this game. I liked it, but I could never truly love it. I still came out of this experience with admiration for the game and what it tried to do. Now, if you want to hear why I feel the way I do about this game, then we need to take a closer look at Bethesda's 1998 release of The Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard. And as per usual, pals, from this point forward there will be spoilers for the entire main story of the game, so you have been warned. But before I actually start the video, I should also explain something else. You see, I kind of did this game's story out of order. There isn't really an order to do it in, but there sort of is, and I sort of was doing things not exactly linear. It's hard to explain, but the story is linear, but you can still do things out of order, if that kind of makes sense. And because of that, and because I was doing that, I missed pieces of critical information or learned something that would go on to make sense later, and so on and so forth. So for this video, I'm going to do my best in order to explain the story to you in some sort of order. And if I miss some sort of piece of information or do something out of whack, I apologize. So if you're a Redguard lore wizard and you're quick to notice that I'm chopping out entire parts of the game or adding bits in early, now you know why. So there you go. Enjoy the video. Oh, and also if I kind of sound a little bit nasally, I'm getting over a cold. So hopefully that's not too annoying. But anyway, enjoy the video. Tamriel is at total war. Tiber Septim carves a bloody path through each province in hopes of conquering all and uniting all as an empire, with him as its emperor. So far, it's been going well enough for him. However, the province of Hammerfall is putting up a tough fight and resisting Tiber Septim's rule. That is until one day when its High King, Facade II, passes away. After his death, Hammerfall falls into complete and utter chaos as civil war takes hold. One side, the Crowns, led by Facade's son, Prince Ator, continues the fight for Hammerfall's freedom, while the other side, called the Forebearers, have given up and accept Tiber Septim's rule as their emperor. Sadly, when things finally seem to be going well for Prince Ator and his campaign as he slowly begins to regain control of Hammerfall, the Forebearers behind his back sign a pact with the Emperor that allows him to move his armies into Hammerfall, which are led by a man named Lord Richten. Ator, with his back against the wall, musters what army he can and clashes against the might of the Empire just off the coast of Stros Mackay. The battle is fierce, and Ator's army is able to match the strength of Lord Richten and the Empire. However, when things seem to be going all too well, Lord Richten reveals that he had an ace up his sleeve the entire time. A great big bloody dragon. The dragon sweeps across the ocean and lays waste to Ator's armies. Prince Ator prepares his archers and is ready to give the command to fire upon the dragon when an assassin fires a poisoned arrow at Ator. The poison spreads fast, and Ator's wizard, Archmage Voa, tries his best to save Ator's life, when the dragon swoops down and in one fiery breath ends the wizard and the rest of the Crowns. The Empire is victorious, and Lord Richten assumes command as the new governor of Stros Mackay, Prince Ator's temporary home. With Ator dead and no true leader to guide them, Hammerfall finally begins to fall to the Empire and accept Tiber Septim as the new emperor. However, none of this really bothers our hero of the story, Cyrus, a pirate mercenary who sails the seas and pretty much does whatever he wants. Well, I say none of this really bothers him. That is, until today. An old Khajiit contact reaches out to Cyrus and hands him a letter. In this letter, Cyrus learns that his sister Azira has gone missing from the town of Stros Mackay. Upon learning this, Cyrus books passage to the port town of Stros Mackay in hopes of finding his sister. On his trip home, Cyrus's ship comes under attack by an unknown group of pirates, but Cyrus is no slouch, and he knows a thing or two about the ways of the Cutlass. He goes toe-to-toe with his foes and slices and dices them, and then after that he just continues on to Stros Mackay. Now that we're here in Stros Mackay, first thing is first. The letter mentioned that if Cyrus wanted to learn more, he should meet up with Tobias at the Dragon Tail Inn, so that's our first stop. Cyrus makes his way through the town until reaching the Dragon Tail Inn. Inside the inn, Cyrus meets up with its Argonian owner, Drekius, a friendly fellow who smuggled out the letter and also happened to know Izara. Cyrus also meets up with Tobias, the man who wrote the letter. Tobias and Cyrus go way back and spent many years working together as mercenaries and were actually really good friends. Tobias explains to Cyrus that he doesn't know much about his sister's disappearance, just that she was a crown, and a loud and proud one at that. Being a crown after the Battle of Stros Mackay is dangerous since Governor Richten took control, and anybody loud enough with their political beliefs or allegiances was fed to Richten's dragon, and it's for that reason Tobias fears the worst for Izara. Aside from that, Tobias explains that all the info he had actually came from a priest of Arkay here in town, Brother Niddle. He was the one who alerted Tobias to the fact that Izara was missing, but when Tobias pressed him for more information, Niddle refused. Tobias tells Cyrus to start with brother Niddle. Maybe being her brother will get Niddle to open up more. So, it's off to visit brother Niddle at the Temple of Archay. The temple seems to be a rather nice and quiet place, a refuge from the outside world for those that might seek it. The temple is run by brother Niddle, who appears to be one of only 2 priests here in the temple. Cyrus speaks with brother Niddle and asks about his sister. What we learn from Niddle is that he did know your sister and her affiliation with the Crowns, and that he learned of her absence after another priest of Archay went missing, brother Kithril. It seems Kithril became somewhat infatuated with Izara and her political beliefs. He became a Crown sympathizer, a very dangerous thing not only of late, but especially in this city. It would seem that brother Kithril and Izara were up to something before both of them vanished, but brother Niddle has no idea what. All he knows is that the last time he saw Kithril was over by the city's garden after he sent him there on a little herb-picking mission. Before we leave to investigate, Cyrus also learns a rumor from Niddle that his sister and the prince might have been more than just friends, if you catch my meaning. So with all of this newfound knowledge, Cyrus takes a stroll on over to the garden, but doesn't find much. Well, I say he doesn't find much, but that was a cheeky little lie. You see, what he finds is a secret tunnel behind a waterfall. And as we all know, when you find a secret tunnel behind a waterfall in a video game, you must investigate. By this infallible logic, Cyrus ventures that brother Kithril found the same cave and went exploring. So, Cyrus does the same. The cave, as one might expect, is dark, danky, dirty, and filled with goblins. This, however, is not an issue for Cyrus. He's a hardcore pirate mercenary guy. He ventures deep into the cave, slaying goblins, bouncing off giant mushrooms to get across acidic water that's down here for some reason, avoiding tentacle things, chugging health potions, until he finally finds the remains of brother Kithril and his journal. Cyrus reads the final words of Kithril and learns that he ventured into this cave not out of sheer curiosity like us hardcore gamers, but he came in here with a purpose: to find a special ring. A ring that belonged to Archmage Voa, the wizard who fought alongside Prince Ator and perished with him. Why Izara wanted this ring in the first place is unknown, but whatever her reason, brother Kithril deemed it worthy enough to venture down into this cave to try to get the ring. We also learn from the journal that Izara was supposed to be here with Kithril, but failed to show up. With this knowledge, Cyrus ventures deeper into the cave in search of Voa's ring. After even more goblin slaying, awkward platform jumping, desperately fleeing from whatever this thing is, an entire real-life hour and 20 minutes, and finally a boss fight, and by boss fight I mean I just ran around it, Cyrus finally finds the ring. Whew, man, that cave really took it out of me. Thank goodness it was the only long dungeon in the whole game with awkward puzzles to solve. With the ring now in hand, Cyrus returns to brother Niddle, who, upon hearing the tragic news of Kithril, now considers Cyrus a true friend, and as such, he decides to come clean about what he really knows. It turns out that Princetor's body is actually here in the Temple of Arcade. It's hidden and it's safe. Before he died at the hands of the at the breath of the dragon? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Before he died, Archmage Voa used his ring to put the prince's body into a sort of stasis, thus preserving it. It seems as though Izara and Kithril wanted the ring so that they could remove the stasis field from the body, but for what reason, we're unsure. Princetor is dead, or at least going to die from the poison, there's no question about it, so removing the stasis field from him won't really do anything. Something is going on here, but what it is, we're unsure of. After leaving the temple, Cyrus finds himself in a bit of a pickle. The trail is cold, and we have no idea what to do next, so Cyrus did the only thing he could do. Do a shady sounding job from a shady sounding kind of guy down on the docks. I mean, what could go wrong? The job seems easy enough. All we need to do is sail on over to a nearby island with the help of a ferryman, get an amulet from somebody named Nagasta, and then deliver said amulet to Governor Rickton. Simple. And what's better is, we'll get 200 gold, boy! Yeah, I love me some gold. So, Cyrus takes the job and heads out of town across the lovely countryside until he reaches the docks on the far side of the island. Now, to reach the ferryman, Cyrus must walk across some rickety old rotting bridge, so I'm sure nothing will go wrong. So, whoa, hey, whoa, jump! Oh, okay, save me! Whoa! Did I just do a Legolas right there? Oh, damn! Redguards are awesome! I had no idea they had this kind of power! Damn! Well, anyway, after making it across the bridge and reaching the... ferryman? Let's not think about this too much. Creepy. After paying the ferryman boat skeleton man thing, Cyrus sails on over to Nagasta's private island, and then the game crashes. Oh, man. Isn't that a neat feature right there? Classic Todd joke. Oh, Todd, never you change, you little prankster, you. Anyway, once on the island, Cyrus quickly learns that this place is actually a hellscape filled with zombies and screaming skeletons. Wonderful. It takes all of Cyrus's skill, but eventually he makes it on over to Nagasta's sweet Tower of Doom. There, he meets up with the slowed necromancer himself, Nagasta. Now, I don't know much about the slowed race. Maybe they're nice people, but Nagasta here has a face that only a mother could love. Maybe. Hard to say. It's really, really hard to say. Anyway, Nagasta seems nice and not creepy and or nefarious at all, and after some exchangement of pleasantries, he eventually hands over the amulet we came here to get. With the amulet now in hand, Cyrus runs all the way back to the ferryman boat skeleton man thing and returns back to Stros Mackay. Over in sunny Stros Mackay, Cyrus makes his way over to the governor's palace, and when there, informs the guards outside that he has a package to deliver to the governor. Once the guards let him in, Cyrus comes face to face with Lord Governor Rickton himself, and also the dark elf Drom, who was the very assassin who shot the poisoned arrow at Prince Ator. Rickton welcomes Cyrus to the palace and asks for the amulet, but before handing it over, Cyrus, like the boss he is, refuses to hand over the amulet until he gets a few answers. Rickton, impressed with Cyrus, answers some of his questions. Cyrus asks if he knows anything about Izara, and Richten informs him that he does indeed know his sister, and that she was also part of a group known as the Restless League, a group of rebel pirates who follow the crowns and had the prince's ear. And as of late, the Restless League has resorted to causing chaos for the Empire just off the coast of Stros Mackay. However, Richten tells Cyrus that if his sister has gone missing, he had nothing to do with it. After that, Cyrus tries to get a few more answers, but just ends up ruffling the governor's feathers and is thrown in prison. While in prison, Cyrus meets a dying man, who, as it turns out, is actually part of the Restless League. How lucky! Wow! The man tells Cyrus that he has a key to the lighthouse, a lighthouse which is used to signal the League. Best not to ask how he was able to keep said key or even retrieve said key, but Cyrus takes the key, and then, sadly, the man dies of his injuries. Or hunger. Or maybe thirst. Or just the shame of swallowing a key and, pooping it out later and then handing it to another person, probably not even washed. So, yeah, he maybe died of shame. But regardless of any of that, he is dead now. With new leads to go on, Cyrus gets to work breaking out of prison, and what a wild adventure it is. There was sword fighting, some running around, big jumps over lava pits that is down here for some reason, and solving some puzzles, and oh man, it took me an hour and a half to finish. Oh, wowzers. What a roller coaster ride. Why? Oh, anyway, once out of prison and with a renewed sense of freedom, Cyrus gets to work by heading on over to the local lighthouse to signal the Restless League. This stuff always seems to happen to me, doesn't it? Oh, okay, so I have to stop here really quickly and just address something. From this point forward, you may or may not notice a change in the video's quality and or its resolution size. This is because my recording software threw its metaphorical hands in the air and just said, "I'm done, Chief," and then it just stopped working. I did not know this, so that's right, I continued playing and recording almost 5 hours of footage. And what did I get when I finally quit the game for the day and went to go and check said footage? Well, I found I had close to 5 hours of almost an entire black screen. So, riveting stuff. So yes, I lost a ton of footage and I had to switch recording programs, but of course, it was all far too late and all my save files had already been saved over because, from my perspective, everything was still recording and looking fine. It's only when I quit the game to actually check the software of the recordings that I found the problem, but anyway, a side note, it actually is still broken. I was playing a game for an upcoming video. I played it for like 3 hours and found that it's still broken and just recording a black screen and all it's actually picking up is the sound. For some reason, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter, not the point. The point is, what does all of this have to do with the video going forward? Thankfully, not much. You see, in that time, all I had done was like 2 dungeons to progress the story forward and some other faffing around. The dungeons, thankfully, weren't all that important, and the footage that didn't get corrupted for whatever reason is thankfully some footage that I actually need for later on in the video when I'm talking about a puzzle. So, yeah. look, the only reason I'm bringing all this up is because I know somebody will complain that I'm cutting out part of the story and skipping, way forward into the future, or not talking about dungeons or whatever, even though at the beginning of this video I gave the warning that I'd be cutting things out. So yeah, or someone's gonna mention the video's quality and so on and so forth. So anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. The video's gonna change from this point forward. I hope you understand. Let's continue, shall we? At the lighthouse, Cyrus uses the light to signal the League, and eventually, after far too long trying to get the signal timing right, a ship eventually pulls into port and Cyrus boards it. The ship brings him all the way to the League's secret hideout. In the hideout, Cyrus is able to speak with the leader of the League and learn that they have no idea where Izara is, but they might be able to help you find out. You see, Izara left behind a journal, but only the blood of a family member can open the lock. Thankfully, Cyrus has blood to bleed, and bleed he does, which opens the lock. Gotta say, that's some pretty hardcore stuff right there. Personally, I just use a normal lock, but hey, to each their own, I guess. Anyway, with the journal now open, Cyrus, he learns nothing. Just the fact that his sister doesn't want him around, and that they had a pretty big falling out many years ago. Cyrus killed her husband. However, that story is for another time. And also for the comic book tie-in that they made for the game. So, oh well, guess we'll never know. The leader of the League enters the room and Cyrus demands answers from him. However, the man confesses that he doesn't have any answers to any of Cyrus's questions, but does tell him what the League has actually been doing all this time. So it turns out that there was a little more to the story about Prince Ator's death in the final battle than most people know. The prince and his army were winning the battle, and Richten really did let loose a dragon, but what most people don't know is Ator actually challenged the dragon to a fair fight, a one-on-one fight. But before the dragon could accept his challenge, Dram, Richten's right-hand man, assassinated Ator unfairly. Richten didn't want to take chances on Ator actually winning the fight. As the poison spread through his body, Archmage Voa put the prince's body into a stasis and his soul into a soul gem. His plan was to retreat from the battle with the body and the gem and cure the prince at a later time. But the dragon had other plans and cooked everybody to well-done human steaks. After some time passed and long after the battle, the League somehow got their hands on the Soulgem and with Izara's help began to cook up a new plan of their own making. They wanted to bring back the prince themselves, muster their forces around him, and retake Stros Mackay, and eventually, with Ator now leading them, take back Hammerfell. Only one problem. Izara took the Soul Gem and vanished. Nobody knows why she stole it or where she went. So our job now is to track down Izara, the Soul Gem, and resurrect Prince Ator. But where to start? Well, thanks to the magic of editing, I know just where to start. Nagasta the Necromancer. That's right, pals. Who could have foreseen that the ugly slug man himself, who enjoys bringing back the dead to serve him, would turn out to be Ebil? Huh. Well, Izara, in her desperation, got wind that Nagasta could use his necromantic magic to free the soul from the Soul Gem and so she went to his island to ask for help. So it's off to Nagasta's Island of the Damned to have a little chat with him. The return to Nagasta's island is just as bleak, dark, and smelly as last time. The undead roam free. Well, I say free, but they are being controlled by Nagasta, so, I mean, these aren't really true, free-ranged undead beasts, but you get what I'm saying. After running all the way on over to Nagasta's tower and entering inside, Cyrus is met with insane levels of darkness. Hold on, let me turn up the brightness here. Okay, that's better-ish. Anyway, aside from the darkness, Cyrus is met with two hell beasts from the depths of oblivion itself. Rather than greet him like a normal person, they instead go straight for the throat. But thankfully, Cyrus is a skilled swordsman, and... one second. Cyrus is a skilled swordsman and easily slays these hellish foes. With the god demons dead, Cyrus is able to take a good look around the tower and is eventually able to make it all the way up to the top. There, he finds Izara. However, she appears to be in some sort of trance and unresponsive. That's when old slug boy himself finally shows his slimy, yucky face. I mean, I assume it's slimy. I don't know. I shouldn't make assumptions, but I mean, it looks like it would be slimy to the touch. You know what I mean? Anyway, Nagasta tells Cyrus that his sister did come to him asking for help with the Soulgem, but, you know, Ebil got a Ebil, and rather than just help her, he just took her soul and gave it to his master as a gift. As for the Soulgem, well, he gave that to us. Yes, you heard me right. Remember that amulet we got from him to give to Richten? Well, that was actually the Soulgem turned into an amulet. Nagasta has been a jerk this entire time. Well, at least we know where the Soulgem is, so that's good. But for right now, we need to kill Nagasta and save Izara's soul. The epic showdown between Cyrus and Nagasta is as amazing as you would expect. He casts a spell, and we reflect it back at him with the help of a special item I got off screen, and then we do it again, and do that again, and, you know, eventually he dies. You get the picture. With Nagasta now dead, Cyrus takes his special Necromancer cookbook of the damned and whips up a special portal to Oblivion. Why, you may be asking? Well, as it turns out, Nagasta's master is Clavicus Vile, a Daedric prince. That's right, pals. That's why we made a portal, so we could go into his hellish realm filled with sunshines and rainbows and clear skies and fresh cut green grass and trees and a crystal clear lake and... What? Well, wasn't expecting that. So anyway, once in this nightmare realm, Cyrus meets up with Clavicus Vile. Clavicus tells Cyrus that he does indeed have his sister's souls and what sights he's been showing her, and if we want her back, we're gonna have to play a little game. Cyrus accepts, and the game begins. The rules are simple. There are two doors to choose from. One leads to death and eternal damnation at the hands of Vile himself, and the other leads to freedom and Izara's soul. To choose which is the correct door, there are two gods. One always lies, the other always tells the truth. To find out which is which, Cyrus can only ask one question of them. Not ask both of them one question, just one question, period. And then, with that information, he has to choose a door and walk through it. Now, I gotta admit, I've done this type of puzzle before. This isn't new. However, what did bug me is that I had to ask the exact right question of the exact right person. I couldn't just pick any question and then take an educated guess. Normally, I'd save this part for the gameplay section, but it bugged me and I wanted to bring it up now. But anyway, after asking the question and taking a chance, Cyrus picks a door and enters it back into the normal world with Izara's soul. He returns her soul back to her body and the two reunite and finally return to the Restless League's hideout. So the plan for getting the Soulgem is simple. The League will stay in their hideout and, continue to hide like cowards, while Cyrus returns to Stros Mackay and breaks into Rigdon's vault and steals the Soulgem back and possibly fights a dragon. We'll see where it goes. And then once we get the Soulgem, we do all the work and restore the prince's soul to his body and then, take over Stros Mackay. Simple, elegant, easy. So, with that said, it's time to get back the Soulgem. When Cyrus arrives in Stros Mackay and gets underway for looking for the vault, you would think it would actually be quite the difficult task. I mean, it is a vault after all, with untold riches stored within. However, we've actually been to this vault before. Well, I say we've been to it, we walked past it. You see, when Cyrus was actually breaking out of prison, just before he left, he passed by a big locked door. And thanks to Izara, we actually have the key to said locked door. But why does she have the key to the vaults? Well, remember back when there were rumors about her and the prince? Well, it turns out, surprise surprise, that those rumors were true. She and the prince were an item, hence why she's been fighting so hard to bring him back. Now that is the power of love. God, I love Back to the Future. What a great movie series. Anyway, once inside the vault, Cyrus again makes his way through it. He fights lots and lots of gods. He does some puzzles, falls through the world, opens some doors, does some heavy drinking to dull the pain of life, and try to forget all about the killing he's been doing up until this point. And finally, he enters the treasure room, where he finds thousands and thousands of golden pennies. Ooh boy. Oh, and I should mention that there's a great big bloody dragon in here as well, so, I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Just, yeah, of course there is a dragon in here. The dragon, yeah, that killed the Prince of Tor. It's here. So Cyrus has a little chat with the dragon, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Here it is. I'm not even gonna try. Cyrus asks the dragon for the Soulgem, but the dragon refuses to hand it over, so Cyrus does battle with the dragon. A long, long battle. In fact, it was so long, I eventually realized I wasn't even doing it correctly. So after figuring out eventually how to kill it thanks to sheer luck, Cyrus slays the dragon and takes the Soulgem. Take that, you dirty Nords! Ha! Redguards are out here slaying dragons without Dragonborn powers. Ha ha ha! Yeah, Fusro da. Ha! Yeah, right. We're out here doing it old school style. We're doing it Hammerfell style. That's right. The Redguards are the best gods. That's right. Anyway, with the Soulgem in hand, Cyrus heads off to the Temple of Arcay, and with the help of good old Brother Niddle and an old Redguard mage woman, the ring and the Soulgem, the prince comes back to life. Only he doesn't. The ritual actually fails. All hope is lost, except it isn't! The twists and turns keep on coming, as it turns out that the prince's soul, for some reason, chose to go into the sword that he was buried with rather than his own body. However, Even with this turn of events, the Restless League give up and are about to call it quits, until Cyrus himself takes the sword and makes a grand old speech that the prince wanted this all along, and that this was his will and his strength, and the strength is his sword, and then with the sword in hand they can take back Stros Mackay and then eventually win back Hammerfell, you know, one of those good speeches. So after that speech, hope is restored, and the Restless League begin their assault on Stros Mackay. As for Cyrus and the Soul Sword, well, they have a date with Richten. Cyrus marches on over to the governor's mansion and enters inside, and begins his mass genocide, slaying any and all imperial scum that stands in his way. Who cares if they're just doing their jobs? Who cares if they took the night shift to earn a few extra gold pieces for their family? Who cares if old little Johnny needs a new pair of shoes? His dad is dead now because he crossed blades with Cyrus and his soul sword, so suck it up, little Johnny. No new Nike Airs for you. I got so specific there. After the mass slaughter and a few puzzle solvings later, Cyrus eventually makes his way up to the top of the mansion, where he finds Dram and Richten, both of which are trying to escape on an airship. Dram is the first to go toe-to-toe with Cyrus, and the fight is tough, but thanks to some casual sword-fighting enhancement potions, Dram implodes, or something. Victory is Cyrus's? I guess? Sure. I had no idea that's how Dark Elves died, but hey, there you go, the more you know, right? Up next is old Richten himself, who actually puts up one heck of a fight. Cyrus tries to pause the fight and drink a few health potions, but this isn't Skyrim, son. You can't just down 15 cabbages, 2 apple pies, 4 lesser health potions in the span of 0.25 milliseconds. No. This is the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, so you gotta get good and drink your health potions on the fly, like a real Redguard would. Thankfully, Cyrus is able to cheese the fight and hide so he can drink health potions indefinitely, in peace and quiet, and then eventually slay Richten. Only, he doesn't. Cyrus disarms him, and Richten demands to be taken into custody instead of death. This confuses Cyrus, but it turns out this was all part of Richten's Ebil plan. He was just buying time for Dram to reappear and get the upper hand on Cyrus. I guess Dark Elves don't implode or whatever that was. All hope is lost, is what I would be saying if the Soul Sword doesn't take control of itself and skewer Richten and slice Dram in half. Damn! Gotta say, that was pretty violent. Anyway, this buys Cyrus enough time to leap off the airship by slicing through it with a dagger as he falls, in some sort of dagger fall-esque move, one might say. That was a terrible joke. Cyrus leaps to safety as the airship crashes and the Soul Sword returns to Cyrus. Anyway, Stros Mackay is free and the future seems bright. Hip hip hooray. After some time, Izara becomes the de facto leader, and she tells Cyrus that the Emperor is coming to Hammerfell himself to negotiate a treaty. After that, Cyrus and his sister hug, and the two look upon a new dawn. The end. Oh man, it got crazy at the end of that. Whew, boy. I'm going to come straight out and say it. I enjoyed the story of this game. It wasn't perfect, but it was enjoyable. And you know what shocked me? Is why I enjoyed it. Not because it's some super strong story or anything like that, but because it actually felt like a cartoon. I know that sounds strange, but bear with me on this. There is an aura surrounding the feel of this game. Unlike previous Elder Scrolls games up to this point, which were Arena, Daggerfall, and I believe Battlespire, this game actually has a lot of cinematic cutscenes. The way these are shot and voice acted lended this level of wonder and awe. A lot of the camera sweeps, credits, and narrations also add to this effect. Maybe it's just me, but all of these elements put together give the cutscenes and the game as a whole less of a video game feel, but more of a 90s kids TV show feel. Again, it's very hard to explain what I'm trying to explain, especially to somebody who didn't grow up in the 90s. But a lot of the shows or movies that I watched personally, especially live action ones, targeted towards a younger audience or teen audience, had a similar feel and look that I'm trying to describe. This honestly feels less like any Elder Scrolls games before, and more like some sort of random fantasy adventure show with a low-ish budget. And I love it for that. But look, listen, let's cast all of that aside for now and talk about the actual story itself. How does it fare? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, it fares pretty well. The game's story is pretty linear, like I said at the very beginning of this video. It's very linear, like it has an order that it wants you to do things in, but you can do those things out of order. You're free to ignore the story the moment you step off the boat in Stros Makai and go off to do other things, but later you'll soon begin to realize that those weren't side missions you were doing, they were actually parts of the story that tied in some way, if that makes sense. Look, for example, when I got off the boat, I spoke with some of the locals and tried to get directions to the inn I was supposed to go to. And I ended up talking with each of these people for like well over 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes even longer than that. And we'd speak about various topics, and for the most part, it was very immersive in that respect, but sometimes I'd get wrapped up in some sort of other drama rather than doing the main quest itself. Again, this is fine. Most of the Elder Scrolls games end up playing this way, but those are perfectly normal side quests and don't actually impact the main story of those games in any way. Almost every single side quest in this game is, like I said, actually story-related quests. And this is how I ended up screwing up my own story. I'd be doing things out of order and learning things that didn't make sense at the time, but would later come into play, later, and by that time already I'd forgotten all about it, or, whatever, and so I just end up running around like a headless chicken, re-talking to people to get one tiny piece of information and dialogue that now makes sense with the context I have. Sometimes these dialogues would save themselves in your journal, but then sometimes they wouldn't, which was kind of annoying. Still, this doesn't really affect the story itself. I just wish, since they were going for less freedom and more of a strict linear story, that they would have locked off dialogue trees or specific people until you were ready to talk to them in the story. And listen, I know how that sounds, especially in the context of the Elder Scrolls franchise as a whole, because it's very non-linear, but since they were going for this more or less linear structure, like I said, I really, really do wish they would have locked things off, just to make it more streamlined, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But at the end of the day, the story itself is actually very nice. And there are plenty of strange people along the way that will either help you or hinder you. And it's because of this colorful cast that the world feels very rich and deep. Another nice thing is that the story itself isn't actually that long, which might seem as a negative, but I actually think it's a positive. It never really outstayed its welcome, and again, it feels like an episode of a TV show or something like that. But yes, all of that said, I actually rather enjoyed the story itself. What I didn't enjoy so much was the gameplay, and now I need to explain why the game begins to fall apart just a tad. Look, I'm not gonna waste your time with a full control breakdown. You know how games work. You know that you got jump buttons and attack buttons, interact buttons, and so on and so forth. But what I will talk about are a few of the bigger things. Things that had more of an impact on general gameplay itself, such as combat, platforming, puzzles, and so on. So let's get started with combat. Before I started this game, I do what I always do for games of this particular era. I read the manual. This is a time-honored tradition, and it's something which has sadly been lost to time itself. Honestly, it's a damn shame. Manuals were a really interesting thing at times. If you had the right creative team behind it, you could get some pretty interesting little books. Like, they could be filled with handy tips or tricks or walkthroughs, jokes, pictures, stories, and more, but I digress. Upon reading the manual, I was surprised to find that this game actually has sort of a fancy sword fighting mechanics. At least, that's how it sounded. You needed to strafe side to side, block incoming blows, try different attacks to counter what your opponent was doing, parry, and so on and so forth. It was pretty neat stuff right there. However, in practice, the entire thing kind of falls apart. Now, since playing this game, and I should confess, while playing the game, I watched a few videos of people playing Redguard. I wanted to see if I was crap at the combat, or if the gameplay itself was broken. And what I learned, that at least from what most people were doing, is that most people just ignored the combat mechanics altogether and just spammed attacks. That's what they did, and that's what I did. You pretty much just you just press the attack button over and over and over again until you aren't hitting with that attack, and then you just switch the attack style and rinse and repeat. You just keep doing that until the opponent dies or you die. And that's sadly what it boils down to. But why? Well, truth be told, from what I can gather after a total playtime of 24.5 hours, is that the combat is just kind of broken. I tried my best, time and time again, to pull off particular moves or blocks or parries, but it was almost like that there was an input lag of sorts. I actually found it was just best to keep pressing an attack button over and over and over until I won, rather than trying to pull off some sort of sweet move. I'm sure there are Redguard pros out there who can avoid incoming blows and parry attacks and counter with a nice riposte, but I sure as heck couldn't do it, and the longer I played, the more I began to wonder something. Something that began to weigh on my mind more and more. Is the game actually running correctly? I'll get back to that train of thought later, but for now, let's continue with general gameplay. So, the sword fighting, no matter what I tried, just devolved into button mashing, which, I'll admit, it was a little bit sad, but it is what it is. However, that's not where combat ends. You see, in combat you can increase the odds of survival with the help of potions. A health potion, a potion of iron skin, and finally a strength potion. Health potions will restore your health by 15 points, of which you have a total of 100 points of health. Potion of Iron Skin reduces incoming damage, so for example, and this isn't the correct math by the way, it's just an example, if an enemy does 10 damage to you without a potion, then with the potion, they'll only deal 5 damage. And the Strength Potion, well, it does exactly what it sounds like. It just, it makes you stronger and then thus less hits for the enemy to die. It makes sense, it's all basic stuff. These potions are a godsend, especially with how random the combat encounters can be. If you chug a few of these bad boys, then you'll breeze through combat most of the time, even if you're just tapping the default attack button. And that honestly sums up combat as a whole. It's clunky most of the time, not much fun, at least for me it wasn't, and most of the time I just ran past enemies, especially in the open world. However, don't think enemies will forget about you the moment you're out of their sight. No, enemies will follow you around the entire game. And if it wasn't for the fact that the AI is rather broken, especially with its pathing, I'd wager they would follow you from one side of the island to the other side and then back into town and back out again until you finally killed them. Now, that isn't to say that they'll never stop, but 90% of the time, they hunted me like a fox to a hound. It was wild. So, that's combat, which makes up a rather large part of the game. Next, let's move on to something that takes up even more of the game, and that's the puzzles and the dungeons. Some of you eagle-eyed folk out there might have noticed how this game plays, at least in the general sense of movement anyway. It's very tank-like. Cyrus controls like a sleek, acrobatic, well-triangle endowed woman. He controls like some sort of dual gun-wielding raider of tombs. I'm saying the entire game controls like Tomb Raider, if you couldn't catch my, what I was putting down there. This might come as a shock to most of you, but I never actually played the original Tomb Raider games back on the PlayStation 1. I had played the demo of each of the games, but never the games themselves, at least not that I really remember. But what I do remember is how they played, and it came as a shock to me just how similar this game was when compared to those games. And that wasn't a trick of my mind or some sort of mistake. Redguard was inspired by games like Tomb Raider. Now, if you've been around my channel for a while and you've watched my videos, you might know that I'm not exactly a big fan of tank controls. I have never been a fan, and I probably never will be, and I make no secret of hiding that fact. I'm not really a fan of how Redguard plays, and while I can't actually directly compare it to Tomb Raider myself, what I can say is that the game is very clunky at times. You'll bounce off of walls and get stuck to walls and bits of the terrain and objects and people, and sometimes you need to, well, sometimes, every time Cyrus makes some sort of particular jump, like if he's climbing up or needs to step up on a ledge or something, there's always this little animation that plays out where he has to maneuver himself into a particular spot before executing the actual jump. And he does this when talking to people as well. So, yeah, everything is just slow and deliberate, which can be fun, but for the sake of immersion, look, I just don't want to stop and have to, slowly turn around. That can be a very big chore and get very annoying after a long time playing. I can't tell you how many times the controls have screwed me over in this game. Look, I could go on, and believe me, I actually did before deleting everything I wrote, because I think you get my point. The general movement around the world is cumbersome, and that's when you're out in the wide open world and space and so on. Because for the most part, when you're out there, it's fine, but when you're in tight spaces or you need a little finesse, well, that's why I'm bringing this up here and now. Movement can affect the dungeons and the puzzles because they're very claustrophobic. In Redguard, for the most part, you'll be going from one dungeon to the next in search of various key items. For example, let's take the first dungeon I did. I had to head into the cavern in search of Brother Kithril and Archmage Voa's ring, and along the way there were like little puzzles to solve and platforms to platform. There were a lot of those, but for the most part, my first dungeon experience was enjoyable. Only let down by a few cheap shots here and there with the traps that were damn near invisible in the dark dungeon light. But overall, I had an enjoyable experience. I liked that the puzzles had a little more thought put into them and made you had to use your noodle to figure things out. However, what became apparent as time went on was the length of said dungeons and the amount of backtracking for some puzzles. After the third dungeon, I was sick of dungeons in this game. They lost their luster and just felt like padding to help with the game's overall runtime. Seriously, each dungeon took me well over an hour or even 2 to complete in full. And I know that that number might sound small when compared to a game like Daggerfall, but bear with me. I remember one puzzle really highlighted the issue of backtracking pretty good, and that was the prison puzzle. To even start the puzzle itself, you had to enter into 3 different rooms. Each room's door had a lock you needed to solve in order to open said door. Once you were finally inside those rooms, then you had to do some platforming, maybe flip a switch here and there, and then maybe, finally, you'll get the puzzle piece you were looking for, only to retrace your steps, re-platform, and find your way back out into the main room, only to turn around and do that whole experience twice more, to receive 2 more puzzle pieces. So that's another door you had to figure out how to open, another room you had to go in and do puzzles and so on, another piece you had to grab and then come back out. So, yeah, but once you had those 3 pieces, then you could actually start the main puzzle, which was a puzzle I have to admit I actually really enjoyed. It was one of my favorites, but anyway, if all of that wasn't bad enough, I should talk about Cyrus dying. This again made me feel like something wasn't quite right with the dungeons, and again I'll get to this a little bit later, but I did find myself dying a lot, and it wasn't so much a skill issue as it was a control issue. Sometimes while doing these puzzles, Cyrus just wouldn't grab a ledge, or he'd get stuck on something. One of the worst puzzles was a rope swinging one. Cyrus would often just leap off in the wrong direction, and you can't adjust your position on the rope, just how high you are or how low you are. The only way to change your position on the rope itself is to jump at it from different angles, if that kind of makes sense. Janky combat? I can deal with that, but janky platforming, I can't. It's annoying dying to something that's just completely out of your control. Now, when the game does work right, and things go smoothly, a dungeon can feel fun, or at least moments of it. And I'll give credit where credit is due, and that is with the variety of the puzzles themselves. No puzzle is exactly alike, and these aren't brain-dead puzzles. You really do need to use your brain in order to figure them out. Sometimes the puzzles do feel a little unclear on what you're supposed to be doing, but that's alright. Puzzles aren't meant to be easy, but I can very easily see a lot of people struggling with what to do without some sort of guiding light or hint, if that makes sense. Now, I want to shuffle things over a little bit and rant about 2 puzzles I did struggle with: the Dwarven Scarab and the Lighthouse. On their own, these are fine puzzles. Good, one might even say, but both are broken. Maybe. One is, and one might be broken. I won't be spoiling how to do the Dwarven one exactly, but I'll be giving away what you're supposed to do. And for the Lighthouse, that one I'll just be fully spoiling, so feel free to skip ahead to the next timestamp if you need to. So first, let's talk about the Scarab Puzzle. It's a transformer, baby! That's right. Without any sort of hint or explanation, the game wants you to turn this Scarab Beetle into a battle bot. But how do you do it exactly? Well, you jump on it, of course. That's right, you jump off chains or platforms and land on specific parts of the transformer to slowly transform it with the help of a button to help you rotate the whole thing around. It's fine, fun and unique, and personally, I like it. Well, the idea of it anyway. For me, it all falls apart because of how damn janky the controls and collision are. If you didn't angle your jump vector exactly correctly, you might overshoot the chain you were aiming for, or the part of the beetle you wanted to land on or grab on. This sucks, but okay, fine. Sometimes when you do land on the beetle, you might just bounce off, which does suck, because Cyrus had nothing to grab onto, or because of the part of the beetle he landed on just wasn't for standing on, so he just slides right off. Even if it looks like you were able to stand on it. Again, this is fine. It's annoying, but it is fine, I guess. My problem is that with each jump, it's high enough to damage various amounts of fall damage to you when you miss. You heard me right. Each missed jump onto the transformer deals fall damage to you. Heck, even if you land on it and you need to jump off because you didn't get exactly where you needed to be or whatever, you'll take fall damage on your way down. Now this is frustrating, and it does cause you to do one of two things: save and reload after each jump, or use health potions. And they knew it was a problem, because in that room, that specific room with the puzzle, there are like 8 health potions just around the area, so they knew you were going to be taking fall damage repeatedly. But okay, fine, whatever. Aside from that is my second biggest complaint, and that's the collision for Cyrus's model and the environment. It was with this particular puzzle when I really noticed how balked the controls could be. Cyrus gets stuck on ankle-high steps, or he just can't step up or jump over it, or he'll just get stuck on objects, or slide off of things, or won't grasp things, and it's just, it is frustrating. Most of the time, you can't land on the beetle and then just, you know, walk your way over to the spot you needed to be. Because you can't walk there or jump there because the collision is so broken. Like, there will literally be something that you should be able to jump over or climb, but there's like, there's like an invisible wall. It's just, oh, it's so frustrating. It was an absolute nightmare. But hey, I'm man enough to admit when I've screwed up, and yes, I might be doing the entire puzzle wrong altogether. I did watch somebody play through this specific part because I was so confused that I was doing something wrong, and I was like, is this right? Is this wrong? I have to look this up. So I watched a video, and I watched this person still struggle with the jumps, just like I did, and they still took damage from each fall, so I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just terrible at video games, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you're a pro and can blast your way through this whole puzzle easily, and if you can, congratulations. You did it, champ. You won. You proved me wrong. That almost sounded insulting. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult if that sounded insulting, but I hope you kind of get my point. Sometimes the game's controls will fight you with the puzzles and the dungeons. So let's move on from that particular puzzle and my irritations with it, and move on to the other puzzle I wanted to talk about, the Lighthouse Puzzle. So, okay, with this puzzle, is when I really 100% fully began to believe that the game was broken. Maybe not fully, but at least not running correctly. So let me explain this puzzle and the issue I had with it, and to do that I need to spoil the answer. So at this point in the story, Cyrus needs to contact the Restless League, and he does this by lighting the lighthouse and then using the light to send out a code like Morse code, if that makes sense. He does this by turning the light on and off. Easy, sounds fine, right? The code is actually just 2 short flashes and 1 long one. As the game puts it, flash, flash, flash. That's the hint. So again, this sounds easy, right? You've got the code. What's the problem? Well, the problem is, and I'm not exaggerating here, this one puzzle, it took me well over 2 solid hours to finish. And I wasn't the only one. I was so convinced I was doing the wrong thing that I went to YouTube. And I watched almost every single playthrough that I could find of this game, which there aren't many. It took one guy about 20 minutes, and another even longer than that. One guy gave up after goodness knows how long, and another guy, to counter almost all the videos I had watched up to that point, did it instantly. And another guy did it after only 3 attempts. But I couldn't do it. My code was correct, but for some reason it just wasn't working. I sat there trying to match the videos and their speed, but no, nothing, nada, zip, zilch, zero. And so, there I sat, saying flash, flash, flash. I repeated the code, I flipped the switch. I even got to a point where I literally tossed a YouTube video onto my second monitor and was just watching a YouTube video while mindlessly pressing the button on the game just to, hopefully get it. And at one point, after well over 2 hours of I literally was just sitting there watching watching YouTube videos. I wasn't even paying attention to the game. I was just watching videos. And then, out of what I can only describe as sheer luck, the cutscene finally triggered and I was able to move on. Now, the puzzle itself is fine. Yes, it made me want to scream bloody murder, and yes, I rage quit multiple times, but the concept is solid. However, the puzzle itself isn't what I honestly wanted to talk about. I only bring this up because it's a segue into the next segment of the video. The puzzle really cemented a thought I was having while I was playing this game. It hinted at something perhaps wrong with Redguard itself, and that problem is the emulation. So, to actually run the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, you need to run it through DOSBox, or some program like it. By default, Redguard on GOG runs through DOSBox. It's all set up for you and ready to rock and or roll. I can't speak to the Steam version, or anywhere else, because I didn't have it on those platforms. I only had it on GOG, and GOG uses DOSBox. Now, it shouldn't come as a shock to you, but old games don't really run on modern computers anymore. The hardware and software have changed so much that they just don't work anymore. To fix this issue, programs like DOSBox or ScumVM emulate the settings necessary to essentially get the game compatible with modern systems. It's a bit more complex than that, but that's just the rough gist of things. GOG was founded on the very notion of trying to preserve old games and get them running without you needing to know anything. You just buy, download, play. That is fantastic, and most of the time it does work flawlessly, but other times it doesn't. And I believe Redguard is one of those times. I had so many little issues with my game across my playtime, like the Lighthouse, that made me think that something isn't quite right, and the game isn't running like it should be, like it was meant to be. I can't remember the exact specifics of it now, but a famous example of this, kind of what I'm trying to explain, was with Fallout 1. There was a problem with it and the force fields in that game that they're meant to shut down after you hack them so you could pass through. The only problem was the force fields didn't shut down, but they actually did. Again, I don't know the exact reasons or anything like that, but I just remember that it would calculate how long the door would stay down based on the CPU, or calculate. I can't remember the exact things, but with modern computers, because they're so fast, the force field went down and restarted literally in the blink of an eye. That issue was fixed thanks to hardworking people, but it points out that there are flaws with emulations of older titles on modern computers. The game for me would often slow down or speed up at random times. Combat would feel sluggish, but I could get this sense that it wasn't supposed to be that way. It's hard to explain, but it was just a feeling I had, and sometimes I would get snippets of the faster paced combat which kind of reinforced my theory. And other than combat, Cyrus would do things like drink potions quickly or slowly, and sometimes the game would pause just long enough for in a frame to make me fail a jump. Or the worst one was when you'd press a button and it just doesn't register, or it's lagging. Moments like this would cause me to run off an edge without jumping, or put away a weapon, or pull it out when I didn't want to, or not execute a particular attack that I wanted to do. Or, in the case of the Lighthouse Flash, maybe it's not registering the button press at the exact right time. All of this might just be a case of cope, as the kids might say, or maybe it isn't. Maybe this is just the sad reality of retro gaming on modern hardware, especially from sites like GOG. I was so convinced that something was wrong and that I was right that I actually went out to test this theory for myself. You see, there's a program out there called ExoDOS. In short, it's a collection of like thousands of DOS games, DOS-based games I should say, that was put together by a team of passionate fans who want to preserve games and also get them fully running on modern hardware, again, without you having to mess around, kind of like what GOG does. And in this vast collection was Redguard. So I installed it, booted it up, and you know what? I was right. And I was wrong at the same time. I can't back up my claims here because, well, truth be told, the recording software doesn't really do any of this justice, and it might actually just come off sounding like a rant. I might come off sounding like a ranting lunatic, but the footage you're seeing right now is from the GOG game, the one I beat the entire game with. And this footage is ExoDOS. Again, the footage isn't helping my case here, but on my screen, as I'm playing it, I feel the difference. Especially since on my screen, it actually looks like this. That's a tiny window, but combat is quicker, movement is much more responsive, and things seem overall smoother. This might just be a placebo effect, true, and I fully acknowledge that, or it might be something a little bit deeper. GOG and ExoDOS are both running Redguard with DOSBox playing it. But it seems the team over at ExoDOS have put a little more effort, time, and love into the code, and thus the game actually runs better. But it also runs worse, if that makes sense. The game actually loads slower, and it slowly boots up the game, and saving the game, and bringing up menus and talking to people. It runs very slow and sluggish there. But when you're out and about and running around, things do seem smoother. And again, I know how the footage looks. It looks practically identical. But when I'm not... it's so hard to explain. When I'm looking at it on my computer, it doesn't match up with what the recording is seeing, if that makes sense. To me, it looks better. But hey, look, maybe I'm just nuts and everyone's laughing at me, but I still honestly feel that something... it's just not running correctly at all with the game. And sadly, the only way to test this theory fully would be to both have a PC of the time and an actual CD-ROM disc of Redguard, and I don't have either one of those, and probably I never will. However, contradictory to all of this, I happened to watch a video, an LGR video, and anybody who knows LGR or Lazy Game Reviews, you probably know that he runs games on the actual hardware and records it, but he says the game is just broken. And to counter any point of it being emulation, he makes a fact of saying that he ran the entire game through the actual hardware and the actual disc. So everything should be playing as how it should have done back in the day. So, like, I don't even know what to say. Maybe the game is bugged out, maybe things are wrong, maybe it's broken here and there, or maybe it is the emulation, or... I don't know, maybe it's... just luck, I guess. I don't know. I can't really say. I don't really have anything to finish this off with. I guess all I'll say is, get Exodus? Maybe that's what I'll end this with. If you love DOS games, and GOG just doesn't have the game you're looking for, chances are you might find it on Exodus, fully ready to play, just like GOG would do it. Yes, we could get into the ethics of the quote-unquote pirating here, and I'm not going to get into that friggin' argument here in this video, but all I'm going to say is, if you've got no problem with torrenting, and you have a spare 700 gigabytes, and no, I'm not kidding about that file size, it is 700 gigabytes, then try out Exodus. It might have the game you're looking for that you might remember from your childhood, or maybe there's a game you want to try out that GOG doesn't have, or something like that. Try Exodus, or Exo Windows, or Exo Scum VM. I can't comment on the last two. I don't have... I could barely keep up with the 700 gigabytes on my hard drive, so I don't have those two. But so far, Exodus is incredible, and the games I have played with it run like a gem, except for Redguard. But maybe it is just Redguard. I have no idea. But the team and the program they have running Exodus has my full endorsement so far. The steps that they've taken are light years greater than what GOG has done thus far, which is incredible. They add in so much detail. Like, they even have old PC gaming magazines just fully on Exodus. It's incredible. It truly is. They got the menus and all the stuff. It really is amazing. Truly amazing. So, yeah, anyway, I could get into the specifics of all of this, but we'd be here for way longer. At the end of the day, all I'm trying to say here is, maybe Redguard just runs poorly. I don't know. Or maybe it is just the emulation. Or maybe it's nothing. I have no ideas. All I know is that emulation sometimes does have its flaws, hence why I don't really do emulation for this channel, for like PlayStation 2 games, or PlayStation 1 games, or Nintendo 64s. That's why I don't really do the emulation, because sometimes there are problems with it, and maybe Redguard has gone to highlight those issues, but... Anyway, I've been talking for far too long about this topic, so let me finish up this video and head on over to the final thoughts segment of this video. Truthfully, this video was actually going to be much shorter than it ended up as. I ranted a little too much on topics that maybe didn't need it, and I'm sure I could have been far more concise with the points I wanted to get across. Still, I've never claimed to be a pro, And Lord help me, I don't actually want to be. I like being open and honest with my thoughts and saying as much as I need to get my point across. You also may have noticed I didn't bring up other things like music, bugs, voice acting, of which the entire game is, by the way. Yes, you heard me right. Each and every single spoken dialogue is fully voice acted by voice actors who would go on to be Bethesda staples, at least until Oblivion, that is. Something else I'll comment on very quickly is how terrible the sound quality was. I've played a lot of older games, but for some reason, the compression on the music, sound effects, and voices really hurt my ears, and it hurt so much that it actually caused multiple headaches, which would go on to become migraines. That is why I've been so damn slow on the making of this video. Well, that and a few other reasons, life reasons and all that, but still, I do apologize for being so late on that. And for those of you who don't know how bad migraines can be, let me tell you, they are extremely painful. Excruciatingly so. Like, mine make me feel like my eyeballs are literally going to explode out of my skull. It doesn't matter. The point is, at the end of the day, I do have problems with Redguard. The game is plenty rough around the edges, that is for sure, but I also lack the love or nostalgia that this game might bring and otherwise might, I guess, color my view on this game and my thoughts of it. But it is a fun game. It isn't like any of the other mainline games, and you know what? It's a good thing. It feels fun to see this world from a different point of view. It also just feels nice to try new things, especially without angering the entire fan base. In this game, you do not cast magic. You do not level up. You don't have skill points. You don't have anything like that. You can't become overpowered and spend hundreds of hours doing random side quests for random people that you will never see again. This game is something special. It's unique, and it also has the feeling of one last hurrah before the time of Arena, Daggerfall, and Battlespire would end, and a new era of Bethesda games would begin, such as Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. There are so many amazing ideas in this game that I wish they would have kept. Like, for example, the very Khajiit at the beginning of the game is actually speaking in its native tongue. It's not speaking in English, and you must read the subtitles.
Ficho.
I leave with Duardine's men in an hour.
Renrigi intnor. Oko o imperio ja. Iko po fam rotot velk.
And there are little details like this guy calling you out for standing on a table. I don't know why that's even in the game, but it is, and it's those little things like that that really just are the bright spots on this game. The game has heart, and they clearly wanted to invoke a sense of awe and adventure, and it does that, even if it doesn't do it 100% perfectly. It also has a ton of lore woven into it, and because it takes place essentially in one location, you really get to know the people of the port city of Stros Makai. You aren't on some globe-trotting adventure like in Arena, and you aren't running around the Iliac Bay like in Daggerfall. You're just hanging out in Stros Makai, the dungeons surrounding it, and old Slugboy's Necromancer's Wonderland Island. That's about it. However, I can see people not wanting to touch this game, and sadly, they didn't. The Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard failed to sell well and didn't get many good scores from critics. It was this poor reception from critics and gamers that killed any future that this spin-off could have had. And it would have had, if you can believe it. Bethesda was betting big on this game, big enough to have a comic book tie-in delving into Cyrus's backstory and plans for at least 2 or 3 other games that were sequels to this one, which would have explored Cyrus's other adventures, either in his past or in his future. You can even clearly see that was their plan in this game itself. Like, there are moments where you can clearly tell that they're referencing a future or past event that will would probably go on to be in a game. So, sorry, I woke my cat up. I woke my poor cat up. She's just staring at me now. What was I even saying? I can't remember what I was saying. I guess what I'm saying is that it's just a darn shame they didn't stick with it. Think of how much fun it could have been to have something like this game, but set in a different province with a different race of character. I mean, picture exploring Black Marsh as some actual named Argonian hero. Sorry about that. I think she doesn't like me talking about the Elder Scrolls for some reason. I guess she's more of like a Fallout fan? I guess? I have no idea. I've completely forgotten what I was saying again. Yeah, I just think that this particular game and the game's structure could have been really, really good at exploring smaller stories within the Elder Scrolls world. I think that's what it could have succeeded at being. However, sadly, Bethesda would not stick with any of this because I'm pretty sure Bethesda was having a pretty hard time financially before Morrowind. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they didn't stick with it, but I do think that there could have been a very bright future here, especially if they listened to the feedback, polished the rough edges, and really began to feel more comfortable with either the game's engine or how it would play as a whole. Like, move a little bit away from that Tomb Raider feel, and I don't know, like, I can't really think of a game off the top of my head that could have been structured like this. Just a little bit more freedom in its movement. I guess. I don't know. Maybe they could have refined its gameplay and it could have been something real nice. But yes, I do see how this game might not be for everybody. And if that is the case and you just hate this game, I genuinely understand how you could see that and how you feel that way. So with that said, should you play it? Should you play the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard? Yeah, I really do believe you should, if for no other reason than just to experience it yourself. You can get this game very cheap on GOG and Steam, and I do believe that Steam also runs this game through DOSBox, but I cannot confirm that, so I will say go with GOG. However, if you want to, you could also go with Exodus. It is free on Exodus if you call the monstrous file size of 700 gigabytes free. Otherwise, I'd still say if you are going to pick this up, do wait for a sale, because I can see a lot of people picking this game up and just never finishing it. And if that is the case, I don't want you to spend, I think it's like $5 by default, but even if it was like $2, I would rather you save that $3, especially if you're just going to play it out of curiosity. And if you are just going to play out of curiosity, again, I just recommend Exodus, because it is free, and that way the price of admission is free. And if you end up playing it for like an hour, then you've just saved $2. But it's up to you and how you feel about Exodus as a whole, and the questionable legality around it, I guess you could say. But Exodus also just has an insane number of DOS-based games to boot. So yeah, I am personally glad that I experienced Redguard, even if half the time I was bored in the dungeons and just screaming at the top of my lungs at the puzzles and the bugs I did experience. But to counter that, I did have, genuine moments of fun. I really did. I had great moments of fun. I loved the lore, I loved the setting, I loved the music, I loved the characters and how expressive they could be at times as well. They're very colorful characters. And I really do appreciate the chance they took with this game. I do like Redguard, even if there were other times as well that I was in genuine pain from migraines playing this game, but that isn't the actual game's fault. They didn't pre-program the game with the ability to induce headaches and migraine. Or maybe they did. Maybe it was Todd. I don't know. He is a prankster. He is a prankster, so possibly he programmed that in there. I have no idea, but still, I do believe that there is something here for people to enjoy. How much you do get out of it will be a personal preference, as per usual with any video game. But yeah, that's it, pals. That's all I really have to say, and hopefully you enjoyed the video and enjoyed listening to my thoughts and rants about Redguard. And I do apologize it took me so gosh darn long to get it out, but sometimes life is, quite frankly, life can be a bitch. Frankly, just to, just be completely open and honest about that. But yeah, still, there is one thing that I have to do before I go, and it probably will never ever happen again, but something like this doesn't happen every day, and the very lucky people who got a membership might get a kick out of it, and that is the shoutouts. While I was streaming the Ultimate Mad Lad, Joe Enderman gifted an almost unfathomable number of memberships to the channel, and Joe, I do appreciate it more than you could ever possibly realize, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know I said it multiple times during stream, but from the bottom of my heart and soul, Joe, I do thank you. However, there is a lot of people here, and they are far too many for me to actually give a shout out to, so I do apologize for that, especially since I am losing my voice. But here is your name on screen. The number of memberships will probably never happen again like this, but that's quite alright. So if you were one of the lucky ones and your name is up on screen, congratulations. Congratulations to you. Thank you for being part of this channel. Thank you for always being here. Thank you for taking a chance on my videos and watching them, or falling asleep to them. I don't care how you watch my videos. All I care about is you've gotten something out of it. And for that, I thank you. I thank you for sticking around and just being amazing and as Venzo as you are. And I honestly have no idea what's up next. Because of how late I got this video out, everything I had planned has just been completely tossed out the window. And it's kind of stressful trying to get everything out in November. The October is almost upon us, so I might just have to work on October's video games, so for the spooky month, and then dive back into The Witcher. So what is up next will be a mystery to you and to me, which I've done a few times now, but there you go. Anyway, that's it for me, pals. I'm gonna go, and I'll wish you a wonderful day and or night. Until the next video, my friends, peace out, pals.